Chapter 3. Don't Let It Rise. Why Liberation is Always Faster Than You'd Prefer. There is a moment, right before everything changes, when the most reasonable thought in the world appears. It says, just one more thing, one more day, one more conversation, one more comfort you swear you'll let go after this part. That thought has ended more liberation stories than tyrants ever did. This is Firelight Dialogue Special, Return of the Light, Episode 3. Don't Let It Rise. I'm your tour guide and resident storyteller, Pat Cansor. Waiting teaches endurance. Liberation demands something else entirely. Decisiveness. And humans are famously bad at it. After weeks, sometimes years, of liminal time, something finally shifts. The light is no longer hypothetical. The direction forward becomes obvious enough to be inconvenient. And suddenly the question isn't, will this change? The question is, what am I taking with me? This is where Passover enters the human record, with all the subtlety of a door kicked open. Passover is not a gentle story. It's not patient. It does not care about your emotional readiness. It says, leave, now. And it adds the most offensive detail imaginable. You don't have time to let the bread rise. That single line has caused centuries of commentary, theology, and, inevitably, arguments that miss the point. Leavened bread takes time. Time assumes safety. Safety is a luxury enslaved people do not have. So the bread stays flat. And if that feels petty or arbitrary, congratulations, you're reading it correctly. Liberation does not preserve your preferences. Humans love to romanticize freedom stories after the fact. We imagine careful planning, thoughtful exits, neatly packed belongings. But real liberation happens under pressure, with imperfect information and without consensus, which is why Passover insists on purging. Chametz, leaven, is not reduced, not moderated, not negotiated with. It is searched for, removed, burned. Modern people struggle with this part because we've been trained to believe that everything deserves a second chance. Ancient people knew better. Some things are not evil, but they're incompatible with movement. Comfort can be one of them. Habits that kept you alive in winter can kill you in spring if you refuse to release them. Structures that once provided stability become anchors when the tide changes. Passover understands something we resist admitting. Not everything or everybody gets to come with you. Spring cleaning is not symbolic, it's strategic. You clear the house because crumbs attract rot. You clear the story because old narratives attract fear. That's why the ritual is aggressive. That's why it allows no nostalgia. Nostalgia is captivity wearing perfume. And Passover isn't alone in this instinct. Across pagan traditions, early spring is filled with fire rituals, boundary burnings, and intentional destruction. Fields are cleared. Old growth is cut back. Ash becomes fertilizer. Destruction here is not rage, it's preparation. You don't burn what you hate, you burn what no longer belongs. This is also where trickster energy shows up, because seriousness alone can't carry people through loss. Purim erupts nearby in the calendar for a reason. Masks, noise, inversion. Laughter breaks fear's grip. Mockery disarms power. Survival stories always include humor, because humor proves you're no longer frozen. But even joy doesn't slow the departure. The bread still doesn't rise. Here's the part modern readers quietly resent. Passover doesn't offer closure. There are no exit interviews, no final explanations, no apology tour, just movement. Which is why people keep asking, couldn't they have waited? No, that's how you stay. Waiting has a season, and this is not it. We'll pause here for a moment, because even liberation stories require resources. And I'll thank the people who support this show without asking me to soften the part where not everything survives the transition. Then we'll come back into spring, fire, and why a little won't hurt is historically incorrect. Spring is not sentimental. It looks pretty in photographs, but biologically speaking, it's ruthless. Plants compete. Animals return hungry. Growth accelerates whether the environment is ready or not. Ancient cultures noticed this and adjusted accordingly. Spring rituals are not about purity, they're about clarity. What is still feeding you? What is quietly draining you? What worked once but no longer does? This is where many people stall, because clarity demands action, and action requires loss. You don't get to keep the old structure and move into the new season. That's not how ecosystems work, and it's not how humans work either. This is why liberation stories feel violent, not because they glorify harm, but because change involves force. Force against inertia, force against habit, force against fear, dressed up as caution. The bread doesn't rise because rising takes waiting, and waiting is over. The fire burns hot because hesitation is dangerous. And the community moves forward together because fragmentation is fatal. Every tradition that survives into spring understands this. Christian Holy Week compresses the same arc: tension, rupture, loss, movement. No shortcuts. No easing people in gently. Resurrection does not happen without first emptying the tomb. Egyptian myth understood it through Osiris's dismemberment before renewal. Mesopotamian stories told it through descent and return, power lost and reconfigured. Different symbols, same lesson. Transformation requires surrender of form, and form is what humans cling to when afraid. Here's the truth that Passover refuses to soften. Freedom is not the absence of constraints. It is the presence of direction. And direction demands that you stop carrying what slows you down. If this feels harsh, good. It means you're hearing it. Liberation is not a mood. It's a movement. And movement does not wait for comfort to finish rising. Next time, we'll talk about what happens after the leaving, because humans love to argue about insurrection as if it appears out of nowhere. It doesn't. It appears because after loss, something returns. Not the same, but alive. I'm Pat Cansor, and this has been Firelight Dialogue. Take what you need, leave the rest. Live and let live. Ask the question, what lesson is there to be learned from this? And join us again next time. Share our link with your friends. And remember, if it's time to go, don't wait for the bread.